Finally tonight, how reporters are risking their lives and their freedom to uncover stories that challenge the powerful.
Journalists, they are the eyes, they are the watchdogs of power. Without journalists, there are very few checks on the excesses of wealth and power. Journalists provide information that allows people to make decisions about their lives. Democracies around the world continue to function because there are journalists out there still doing their jobs, risking their lives, still believing that they can make a difference. I'm Sheila Coronel. I'm an investigative journalist from the Philippines. I left last year to teach at Columbia University. I'm also on the board of the Committee to Protect Journalists. I started out during the twilight years of the Marcos dictatorship. I was working for the largest newspaper in the country. We were not allowed to write anything negative about the regime. We couldn't even print photographs showing Imelda Marcos's double chin. We had great hopes for freedom after the fall of Marcos. But 21 years after, the Philippines has become one of the most dangerous places to be a journalist. This is because the rule of law is weak. The courts, the justice system, the entire structure of government cannot provide protection. 60 journalists have been killed since 1986. I've lost friends in the Philippines, killed because of their reporting. And while the situation in my country is especially bad, it's not unique. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a very brief period when a lot of independent newspapers and TV stations came out with critical reports of the government. But that whole era is over. The euphoria ended very fast. The Russian media has been put under severe restrictions by Vladimir Putin, whose allies have taken over most of the media organizations. The critical voices are limited to small circulation newspapers. Anna Politkovskaya was an investigative journalist. She was writing for a relatively small newspaper about the war in Chechnya. She wrote about a very dirty war that most Russians would rather forget. She's been called the conscience of Russia.
Ну, понимаете, как... Да, я знаю правила военных репортеров. Святое правило, что любой кадр, любая статья не стоит твоей жизни. Это так. Я считаю, что Вторая Чеченская война – это до такой степени жесточайшая и лживая получилась война, что просто уже на этом материале совершенно не имеешь права думать о себе. Вот не имеешь права. А ты просто как передатчик этой истины. Я считаю себя просто передатчиком. Да? Вот это стоит.
Anna is one of 13 journalists who've been killed in gangland-style executions since the takeover of Vladimir Putin. She was killed in her own apartment. A hired assassin shot her once and shot her again to make sure she was really dead. I think Russians will always remember that in this dark moment of their history, Anna Politkovskaya spoke out. Turkey has a free press. But there are certain touchy issues that the Turkish authorities are very sensitive about. Any attempt to resurrect the genocide of Armenians that took place in 1915 is not tolerated. Several journalists and writers have been convicted of insulting Turkishness for writing about the Armenian question. Hrant Dink was a Turkish Armenian. He was the editor of a well-known daily.
Ben Türkiye'de soykırım bu. Olan biten soykırımdı dediği için şu anda yargılanan bir insan. Herkese fikir özgürlüğü şart. Şunu unutmasınlar.
Hrant was shot just outside his office by a 17-year-old Turkish nationalist. 100,000 people came to his funeral. Those who gathered there appreciated the importance of his work.
Today is the day we stand up all together and say, as Armenians, we're going to show the world that we will keep Hrant's wishes alive. We will follow what Hrant's words were, what his mission, objectives were in life.
In many countries in Africa, the press has become free after the fall of autocratic regimes. But there are places like Zimbabwe where the press is very much in the thrall of Mugabe.
Mr. Mugabe's government has total control over the media. He appreciates that there is power in journalism. He fears the free flow of information because he knows the potential to undermine him. I started a new newspaper when it had become so obvious that the people were so tired of government propaganda. The motto of the Daily News was telling it like it is. And that's what we went out to do. And predictably, we soon ran on a collision course with Mugabe's government. I was arrested. Then some people bombed our printing press. And I was advised to desist or I would face dire consequences. My greatest frustration is I am away from the situation where I can play a meaningful role in the development of my country.
The press has never been freer in China than it is now. And that freedom comes from rapid economic growth. The market, not the state, freed the media. Journalists have been able to write exposés about government corruption, about social problems, but journalists must be constantly aware of how far they can go, because the power of the state can be exercised arbitrarily. And there are no legal guarantees of a free press. Jiang Weiping was writing about corruption involving high officials in northeast China where he worked. He wrote about a vice mayor who lost $3 million in gambling debt. He wrote about a mayor who built houses for 29 mistresses. Jiang was in prison for more than 5 years. While in jail, he wrote a message for his daughter. Though the road home has many twists and turns, your daddy believes that we will be reunited soon. This world contains so many things that are not eternal, but only truth and justice truly rule the drama of human life. Your old father will not be toppled on this cold night. The giant dragon strides into a new century. Your old father stands on the dragon's shoulders. He will certainly pick up his pen once again. In Iraq, some journalists have been killed in the crossfire. But what people don't know is that most of the journalists who've been killed have been deliberately targeted. Atwar Bajat was a reporter for Al Arabiya television. Her father was Sunni and her mother was Shiite. She reported fearlessly on the war and never took sides in the increasingly violent conflict there. She always wore a pendant representing a unified Iraq.
ظننا كصحفيين أن ضريبة عملنا في العراق قد تصل إلى الموت أحيانا، لكن فتنا على ما يبدو أنها قد تكون البرد والبلل بهذه الصيغة أحيانا أخرى.
She was reporting in Samara in February 2006. She was gunned down there by unknown men who just grabbed her from where she was broadcasting. Atwar's killing shocked Iraqis because to them she was really the symbol of national unity. Gunmen even shot at Atwar's funeral procession. She was only 30 years old. We've just talked about a few journalists of the hundreds who've been murdered or jailed because of their work. The paradox is that the press is freer and more powerful now than it has ever been before. The tragedy is that journalists who exercise that freedom pay a very high cost. What makes us humans is because we can express ourselves. If we are unable to speak out, then we cannot be fully human. And these journalists remind us of that.